Welcome back. President Trump has now issued a clear deadline to Iran, warning that failure to reach a nuclear agreement could lead to U.S. military action. When asked about the timeline, the president said only Iran truly knows how close it is to that deadline, adding that communication has already taken place and the outcome remains to be seen. The United States has deployed what the president himself described as a massive military force to the region. Reports indicate that President Trump is actively considering military options against Iran. At the same time, there are warnings that Iran could retaliate by targeting U.S. allies, including NATO partners, if an attack were to occur. Joining us now for a closer look is Matt Whitaker, the U.S. ambassador to NATO. Ambassador, thank you for being with us tonight. Many Americans are asking what the ultimate goal is here. If the United States were to strike Iran, would it be a limited action, or would it signal an attempt at regime change? And how do NATO allies, beyond Israel, view the president's approach?
It's good to be with you. The president has been very clear about Iran. They cannot be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and they must stop the violent suppression of protesters within their own country. These are clear red lines, and President Trump is reinforcing them with a strong military presence in the region.
This deployment is certainly a show of strength, but it also leaves Iran with a clear path to de-escalation. The demands are straightforward: stop killing your own citizens and abandon nuclear ambitions. Our allies understand that there are certain actions only the United States is capable of taking. We have demonstrated this before, including coordinated actions with Israel. At the same time, Iran has the ability to step back from escalation if it chooses. The decision is theirs, but the president will not wait indefinitely. One of the red lines you mentioned was the killing of protesters, and Iran has already crossed that line. Hasn't the Iranian government already gone too far? And if so, what comes next? They have crossed that red line. President Trump has made that clear by issuing an ultimatum. He does not want the situation to spiral out of control. The goal is not to destabilize Iran the way other countries were destabilized in the past, without a plan for what comes next. Any use of American power must be careful and deliberate. This is a critical moment for the Iranian leadership. They need to abandon their nuclear program and stop violently suppressing their own people. Once again, the choice is theirs. But the president has been clear that patience is not unlimited.
Ambassador Whitaker, thank you for joining us. Turning now to Ukraine, a U.S. delegation including Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent met today in Florida with a Russian special envoy as part of ongoing efforts to push for peace. This comes as President Trump says he believes a deal may be close.
I've helped bring an end to several wars, and some of them were expected to be harder than this one. The hostility between President Zelensky and President Putin makes it difficult, but I believe we are getting close to a settlement. Hundreds of thousands of people, mostly soldiers, have lost their lives, and the killing needs to stop. Ambassador, do you share the president's confidence that an agreement is near? I believe we are closer than ever before, though I've said that in recent months as well. We've resolved several major issues, including security guarantees and long-term stability for an independent Ukraine. However, the final stage of any peace deal is always the most complex. Questions around territory, borders, and enforcement of ceasefires are extremely sensitive. That said, progress continues. Ending this war is essential, and the president is right that the loss of life must stop. I remain hopeful that a peace agreement can be reached, but it will require commitment from both sides. Ultimately, we will have to see whether both parties truly want the war to end. Thank you for that update. This week, Secretary Marco Rubio spoke before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, calling for changes to NATO's structure and responsibilities. Let's take a listen. NATO needs to be rethought in terms of its obligations. This isn't a new idea. Previous presidents have raised similar concerns. The reality is that without the United States, NATO cannot function as it currently does. For the alliance to be stronger, our partners must also become stronger. The US cannot focus solely on Europe. We have defense responsibilities in the Western Hemisphere and the Indo-Pacific as well. And our resources, while significant, are not unlimited. Ambassador, when Secretary Rubio says NATO needs to be reimagined, what does that actually mean for the future of the alliance?
We're in the middle of what I would call a fundamental reset. Even decades ago, leaders warned that Europe needed to take greater responsibility for its own defense. After more than 70 years, that moment has arrived. European allies must take the lead in conventional defense across the continent.
President Trump deserves credit for pushing allies toward a 5% defense spending commitment, something many thought was impossible. Now, the challenge is turning that commitment into real capability. Progress has been made, but there's more work to do. Strengthening NATO means not only military readiness, but also economic strength. That combination is what ultimately preserves peace.